Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I'm here today to do a Friday Reads where I talk about the week in reading and any other book-related things that have gone on. This is probably going to be a quick one because I'm filming this on Friday and it's been a week. Work has been nuts and it's been very difficult to find time to fit things in and blah, 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 blah. It's the end of the day on Friday and I don't have a lot of time to film this and get back to the world. I'm sorry, you also don't have Teddy, but Joel is in the kitchen right now baking a cheesecake or making a cheesecake because it's a no-bake cheesecake. And that was requested by my mother-in-law for her birthday was earlier in March, but we are going to Helena this weekend to celebrate with her. So that was what she requested. So Joel's in the kitchen doing that and Teddy would not leave his side. So I'm sorry, you don't get Teddy today. The big thing that went on this week is that I finally filmed my reaction to the Atlantic's video, their list of the great American novels. And, you know, the danger of filming and doing your reaction as you go through is that you don't have a lot of time to sit and think and consider the list and what's missing from the list. So I guess because I had To Kill a Mockingbird on my list, because I just really assumed it would have been there, I didn't notice until people started commenting that To Kill a Mockingbird was not actually on the list, which is insane. Really insane. I have to say that. So the video is down below. There's been a lot of great response. I have been so busy this week that I just really have not had a lot of time for comments, and I apologize for that. I'm going to try to get back to them. I haven't even managed to finish my Pulitzer Prize predictions. Usually by this time in the year, I have it published. And I just haven't been able, I've got the list. I haven't been able to get a whole lot of this stuff put together so I can actually film the video. But, you know, they don't announce it until May, so it'll be coming. In quick book prize news, we will be getting the shortlist for the Women's Prize for Nonfiction next week on March 27th. I will be trying to do a reaction video the day that comes out. But, you know, if next week is anything like this week, it will be difficult, but I will try. So that is the big thing that will be coming up. And that, you know, just my reaction to the Atlantic's list was the big thing that happened this week in terms of books, and a lot of great responses. I've seen a lot of great feedback to the books that were on the list, recommendations and things that other people would have liked to see in the comments. Please keep those coming. I will try to catch up to the comments. It's just been crazy right now. I did also want to mention that I stumbled upon a new booktube, or new to me booktube channel, although it is a new booktube channel as well. I think it's about a month old, and I've only watched 2 videos so far, but I've been enjoying it. And I get comments a lot from people who say that they find my videos to be comforting, soothing, because it feels like you're talking to a friend about your books, which is the vibe I'm going for. So I'm glad that it works. And I got that vibe from this channel. I will have a link to it down below. The name of the person is Paul Mars, and just has a very comforting, soothing, conversational style of talking about books that I really enjoyed in those 2 videos that I watched today. So if you are also someone who likes the sort of conversational vibe of my videos, maybe you will respond to those as well. I will have his channel linked down below, so feel free to check it out. So let's get to the actual Friday Reads portion of the video. I did finish 2 books this week. One of them was The Country Girls by Edna O'Brien. Now, this big chunky thing you see here is the trilogy and an epilogue. So I only read The Country Girls, and I talked about how that was going to be my plan of attack for this, because The Country Girls is about 175 pages, and I figured I'm trying to read Irish books this month, and in order to fit in some other Irish authors, I would just do the first one for now and maybe circle back and do the other 2. I did leave my bookmark in, so if by the end of the month I want to go back and read more, I have the option of doing that. But right now I'm just going to leave it with The Country Girls, which is a bit of a shame because, and I think someone had commented this, but there isn't really an ending. It feels like one of the complaints I hear a lot about short stories is that they don't really have endings. But it does have some kind of resolution, I guess. So, you know, it feels like you're sort of supposed to continue reading, which is, I guess, handy that all of the volumes are in one book these days, but I think they were published at least 2 years apart. So if you had read The Country Girls at the time, maybe it was a little frustrating but I thought it resolved enough, but I definitely feel like I will need to go back and read the second installment. I think the second one is called The Lonely Girl, and then the third is Girls in Their Married Bliss, and then there is an epilogue to them. So if you're unfamiliar, the Country Girls was wildly controversial when it was initially published in Ireland, I want to say in the 1960s. And it portrays the life of two young girls in rural Ireland. All right, copyright 1960, 1962, 1964, and 86. So I'm guessing the 86 is the epilogue, and 60 would be when The Country Girls was published. So you have Kate and her friend Baba. Her real name is Bridget. Yes, Bridget. But she goes by Baba. And they are young girls still in school at the time the book opens. And then it sort of jumps ahead a little bit to the time when they go off into secondary school. And they are 18 about when this novella ends. And then the other two just sort of follow their lives. But it talks pretty openly about the complications of their lives, the sort of romantic intrigue of their lives. It is pretty frank about sex and sexuality, which was very controversial at the time. Hi, Editing Greg is jumping in with Teddy, who decided to leave the kitchen because Joel's far enough along in the process that he walked away. So look at that. You do actually get a little bit of Teddy in this video. I wanted to jump in because I didn't really mention this while talking about The Country Girls, but one of the things it's talking about when it talks about their sexuality is just how creepy older men are with them. Like, they are children and then 14, and grown men are flirting with them, trying to kiss them. And Teddy just belched, I'm sorry. And they are just being super creepy, talking about wanting to marry them and all of that stuff. And it's a lot. And, hopefully we have started to do better. But, it talks very openly and honestly about the way these young girls are treated by older men. And as someone who grew up with sisters, I can say that as recently as the 80s and 90s and the aughts, man, we're still doing that to very underage women. So it was very uncomfortable and felt honest, at least from my perspective. Anyway, back to the rest of the video, but I'm glad you did get a little bit of a Teddy fix. Right, baby? Back to it. And it is a really interesting book. And I think one of the things that I really did not want to do when I started reading Irish authors is just read, the same white men and male perspectives that people commonly think of when they think of all literature, not just Irish literature. And for that reason, I definitely wanted to seek out the experience of what it was like to be a woman in Ireland. And I wanted to try to find what it would be like to be a person of color in Ireland. And that's where I ended up with Twisted by Emma Dabiri. So this was very helpful in that it sort of tied in with Nuala O'Foylan's memoir. And I really appreciated that. It's a very interesting, it's very well written. It's very good. The only flaw I would have with it is that it doesn't really have an ending. So I'm glad that there's more to the story, which I will get to at some point. But I really liked it a lot, and I am glad that I finally got around to reading it, because The Country Girls has been on my radar for a very long time. So I'm using the fact that Joel and I are going to Ireland in May to squeeze in some of these books that I've wanted to read for a long time. The other book that I finished was Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. I actually listened to this on audio, which was fantastic because Frank McCourt narrates it. And first of all, that's great because it's nice when you have an author narrating their own book, because you can hear the inflection that they use with it. And it's just nice to hear their work in their own voice and tone. And he has a really great way of telling a story, and it feels like sitting down with someone at a pub and listening to them talk for a while, which is really nice. And of course, there are parts, well, not of course, but there are parts in the book where there are lyrics to a song or somebody is singing, and Frank McCourt would actually sing the parts. And that was really nice. So I'm really glad that I listened to it on audio, but I knew that I was liking it so much that I wanted to have a copy for my library. So I went to my local used bookstore and found this paperback edition of the book. This is commonly referred to as something that is desperately sad but wonderful. And it is very sad in a lot of parts, but I guess what I really had not been prepared for was how funny it also is, and just what a great sense of humor Frank McCourt has. So this is Frank McCourt's story of growing up poor. He was actually born in New York. His parents were Irish and had ended up in New York. His father, allegedly because he had to be sent away because there was a bounty on him, and his mother, because her mother, his grandmother, basically called her useless and said they'll have more room for useless people in the United States. So she sent her to the United States. That's what she told her. And while they were there, she got pregnant. They had Frank and were forced to get married, and then other children followed, and it was the Great Depression. So they really didn't have any money. There was not a whole lot of opportunity. And when an opportunity did come along, Frank McCourt's father drank away the money and quickly lost the opportunity. So they ended up going back to Ireland when Frank McCourt was very young, and they lived in poverty in Limerick. And the book is the story of his childhood all the way up to about age 18 or 19, when he goes to the United States himself. And then I believe his second memoir, Tis, picks up at that point and tells a little bit more of his story. And then his third memoir, Teacher Man, talks about how he got a career in teaching. And I believe he did that for 30 years. And it's about that. And I would like to read those someday, but kind of like what I'm saying about the Country Girls, although I am very interested in continuing Frank McCourt's story, I want to get to some other Irish authors. This, I think, is an all-time favorite. It's that good. It's really poignant. It is very honest and raw about life, especially throughout the whole book. But at the end, as Frank McCourt becomes a teenager, it is also very open and honest about sexuality. Like, he talks about interfering with himself on the roof of a ruined castle. And it's kind of like, oh, wow, good for you, Frank McCourt. Not a lot of people would admit to that in a book. But he really did. I appreciated that. I think one of my critiques of memoirs, autobiographies, and things like that in general is that a lot of the time they feel sort of spun. Like there's a bit of a veneer on them where somebody doesn't want to look bad, especially once they start to get older. And this just felt like a book that was being honest and didn't really care if you didn't agree or thought that he was a bad person or anything like that. He just acts like a kid a lot of the time. And, kids don't always know right from wrong. Adults don't always know right from wrong. And, sometimes like his mother would give him money to go do something and he would spend the money on sweets. Who among us hasn't done that? So I really appreciated this. And it is actually interesting because it's told from the perspective of him as a kid. It's not told from the perspective 100% of someone who is an adult looking back on their childhood. It really puts you in the mind of this child who is going through all of this stuff. And that is part of why it is tolerable to experience all of the sad things that happen. Like his parents lose children, he loses siblings, and a lot of the people that he goes to school with die of disease and poverty along the way. And a lot of bad things happen. But it is also a book that celebrates a lot of the good things, because as much as he and his family go through hard times, there are always people who are willing to care for them and take care of them and be there and support each other and make each other laugh. And I love that. I just really responded to that. So this is an all-time favorite of mine for sure, and I'm glad that I got a copy of it to keep on my bookshelf, and I'm glad I finally got around to reading it. I just, when people talk about this book, they always talk about it being sad. So I really was not prepared for how laugh out loud funny it also is. And sometimes on the same page, you can feel like emotionally devastated about something that happened, and then it's making you laugh almost immediately. And no one had really talked about that. So I was very surprised by how funny this book is. So what am I doing next? Once I finished Angela's Ashes on audio, I looked at some of the other books that I had put on my Irish Pile of Possibilities. The video where I talk about the Pile of Possibilities will be in the description box down below. And I narrowed it down to two. books, and I ultimately decided to give Milkman by Anna Burns a try. I have been a little resistant to this book because people talk about it being very complex and tricky. A lot of people said that audio is a much better way to go, so I feel like audio is sort of a saving grace for this. I am barely into it. I will say this. The opening of the book I thought was very compelling. I was feeling, oh, wow. If this continues, this could be an all-timer as well, because this is just fantastic. So in the opening, you have the protagonist who is talking about gossip and about Milkman, the title presence in her life, and how he just started showing up. He showed up while she was jogging and running, and that part of the book felt really compelling. But then the second chapter goes away from Milkman and talks about her first brother-in-law, her third brother-in-law, and she wants to go running in other places, and you spend some time with her maybe boyfriend, and that part has been less compelling. So it started on this high where I was like, wow, this is incredible. And then chapter 2 was kind of like, okay, can we get back to Milkman? But I'm still very early. Like, those are the only 2 chapters that I've listened to so far. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the book goes. And I just think that part with Milkman was so compelling in the beginning that then we got away from it. And, I'm sure the rest of the book will adjust once I get further into it. So that's what I'm doing on audio. Once I finished The Country Girls, I picked up Last Stories by William Trevor, obviously a story collection by William Trevor, who is regarded as a master of the short story form, and I've wanted to read these for a really long time. So again, I'm sort of using this trip to Ireland as an excuse to read some books that I've had on my list to get to for a really long time. And again, I'm just really not far into this book at all. I am 19 pages in, so I've only finished 1.5 stories so far. And the writing has been great so far. I enjoyed the first story. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of it goes, but I'm just really not far into the book. And I finished The Country Girls, I want to say on Monday or Tuesday, possibly even Sunday. And I just have not had a lot of bandwidth to read and have been tired, and work has been crazy, so I haven't had a lot of time during the day. So, I just have not had a whole lot of time to devote to reading, and I'm really hoping that I will get through this soon. Again, we're going to Helena this weekend to celebrate my mother-in-law's birthday, which had already passed, and I don't know how much time I will have to dedicate to reading over the weekend, but I'm going to try. I will bring this. I'll bring my headphones so I can listen to Milkman and try to make some progress on that. But that is what I have going on. And because I'm barely into both of the books that I'm currently reading, I don't think there's really any purpose in trying to figure out what I might do next, especially since we are starting to bump into the end of the month. I think I will try to catch up to some of the Irish books that I didn't get to in March, in April, but we'll see how that goes, because I also have some things that I want to try to cram in, like before the Pulitzer announcement and things like that, like Blackouts by Justin Torres. I want to read that before the Pulitzer announcement, so that I'll have to get that in April. But I also want to get some Scottish authors because we will be going to Scotland. So I'm going to try to maybe continue this Irish theme into April, but mix in some Scottish, mix in some new, and I don't know how that's going to go. My reading has still been pretty slow in 2024. I'm just having a hard time, getting the motor going, keeping the motor going, and feeling inspired. It'll come. I'm just trying not to force anything either, because I think the second you start trying to force things, it's not fun anymore. So I'm just trying to allow myself to go at my own pace and not stress, because I did definitely want to read a lot of Irish books this month, and so far I've only finished 4, and hopefully I'll at least finish Milkman and Last Stories before the end of the month, so put me at 6. So, and if that's what it ends up being, 6 is still a good number for a month, but Anyway, that's what I've been listening to and reading and all of that stuff. I'd love to hear what you have been reading and how your week has been going and all of that stuff. Again, I'm sorry you didn't get Teddy. He just, for understandable reasons, was not going to leave the kitchen while Joel is in there doing his thing. So Anyway, let me know what you've been reading, loving, all of that stuff in the comment section down below. And as always, I really appreciate your time. I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.